Alright, so we're going to begin the lighting and texturing process for our street corner. And this is nearly where we're going to take it. I'm kind of showing some of the little things in here, some of the things we want to highlight. The Some of these things are going to be very easy textures, like the texture on this, the texture on trash cans. The street area here is a little bit trickier to do. There's a door that has a nice texture on it. Some signage that has basic texturing. The lights have a basic texturing. The lamps have basic textures. So we're going to go through some of the basic texturing things, and we'll kind of build on that to make this a little bit more complex. For the background, we have an image of some clouds mixed in with a gradient. And we just have just some very basic lighting in our scene. And this is you see my model here. Let me turn my wireframe on. This is a very bit more basic than what the end product is turning out to be. As I continue working, and as I'm sure as you continue working, you may find that you want to expand on some things and add things here and there and move things around. Here's my signs that I have back here. I've kind of redone some of the stuff on the signs. You see this sign is a bit more complex than just that. I've obviously manipulated the lights some. I've added more of a storefront inside here, okay? And then little things that I've done, like if you look very close to this, I've actually developed this a little bit more where I have like layers of different things happening inside here as opposed to this, which is just very basic, corners being cut. Same thing here on the door. All these little details like this are really going to help pay off and make your scene seem much more believable. You can see I have that same kind of thing up here in the windows there. Okay, so it's going to be a lot of like little detail-y type things that are really going to help pull this thing off. All right, so what we're going to do is first start off with our lighting and then move forward from there. I'm going to go to my render settings, and we're going to set this up as far as what we want our render settings to be. We're rendering through Mental Ray, so I'm going to go render using Mental Ray. We're going to be doing linear workflow, so I'm going to enable color management. Make sure this is set to sRGB in and then linear sRGB out. My image format, I'm going to change this right now to an EXR just because that way it'll hold all of our passes in case we have passes. Everything else here should be good. I have some extra cameras. I can just hide those. That's good. We're not really worrying about passes yet. We're not really worrying about the features yet. Not really worrying about the quality yet. We still have this kind of low at 0.2. So that's fine because we want these things to move pretty quick. Under indirect lighting, we're going to create image-based lighting. So I'm going to hit create. And what this image-based lighting does is it puts this big sphere. If I zoom way out, you can see there's a big sphere around here. And what you can use this for is you can grab an HDR image. I'll show you what an HDR image is. These are HDR images. So I could use something like these and wrap them around this sphere and use that as my way of lighting my scene. Well, we're going to do it a little bit different, okay? So I'm going to come in here, and where it says spherical, I'm going to leave it there, I believe. Image file, I'm going to change to texture. Okay, that way it highlights this thing. Okay, so if I just want to do a color on here, I can't just click the color. I have to change this to texture first, and then I can add a color. So I'm going to click on there. I'm going to add a gamma correct. .454 for all three of these. And then under the value, I'm going to click on this and map a ramp. Okay, and you can see what this is going to give me. If I zoom way out, you can see that I have this red to green to blue. All right, and then if I zoom back in, or if I just scrub inside my timeline, my camera keys are still set, so it jumps me back. And I'm going to recommend that you kind of pick a frame that you always want to render on. So I'm going to render on frame 1. I don't know why this isn't going all the way to the end. Yeah, we went to 90. don't know how my timeline got reset. Alright, so I'm going to go to frame 1 because I think that's probably a good frame to render this at. And all of my renderings, I'm going to make sure they're at frame 1. That way I can easily compare to that. And I can see that I'm in my camera. So if I accidentally like spin around or do whatever, I just go back to my camera and I'm back to frame 1. I'm back to where I want to see this. And there we go. Okay. So I'm going to hit the render button. And I'm probably not going to see a whole lot of stuff happening inside here. We'll probably see the background. I'm going to pause it while it goes. Sometimes it takes a little time for it to go on that first mental ray push. Alright, so there's done rendering. And you can see now this green here is much closer to this green that we had there because we had the gamma correcting happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to just delete the red in this ramp. Okay, and if we lose it, no big deal. We just go back to our render settings, click the arrow for image-based lighting, click the arrow for texture, click the arrow for value. Let me get back to the ramp. So we're going to close the red one. The green one is just going to be some sort of sky bluey color. So I'm going to click on there and pick a sky bluey color. Okay. Let me go desaturate it. Just darken it a touch. Okay, so something like this is a good sky bluey color. Now this other one up here, I'm going to click on the map for that color. And I'm going to pick a file. And this file that I'm going to pick is going to be a sky picture that I found. Was it that one? This one. Okay. I found this image online. It's called Cloud High Res Copy. So I'm just going to click on that. And then I'm going to render this again. So I'm going to save my image using the Save button. Click the Render button again. And this one should go much quicker because we don't have anything else going on. Okay, now I don't see any, I can go back and forth just so you can see that, but I don't see any clouds in my scene. And the reason for that, let me go back, is right here, this is where we were seeing this green. Way up here is where the clouds are. So if I were just to zoom out, you can probably see that way up top we have clouds, but way down in the middle we don't. So all I need to do is just kind of pull these and pull this, and I can bring more clouds into my scene. Okay, I'm just basically revealing part of that picture. And this is just kind of like a gradient, kind of turning this on, turning that off. I could also go to this file and click this arrow, the forward arrow, and do a repeat. So I can say repeat this 2 times that way. And so now I'll have 2 sets of clouds going around. I could even repeat it the other way. Come on. I'm clicking you. There we go. And I'm also going to turn mirroring on. And what that'll do is just get rid of any seams that we might have. Okay. I can also grab the sphere and I can rotate it if I see that I'm not getting a good area. I could also move the sphere if I decided to move it and get a different area also. Alright, so there's lots of different options that we can do. Alright, so I'm going to just go back to my frame. I can see there's something of a cloud here. Looks like that cloud's kind of low. So I'm going to play with the ramp. There it is. And just kind of adjust it a little bit. When I have this sphere selected, you can see it shows up right here. So I can click on the Translate Y, make sure I'm in the Move tool, click on the Translate Y, and then just middle drag. Come on. It's going to go slower. And then I can move it up. So now let's take a look at this again. Save the image, render it again. And now you see we're getting some sort of clouds in the sky here. Now it might be too blue or whatever. We can always take the images into Photoshop. I could always go back to this blue here and adjust it. But this blue isn't really adjusting the blue that we're seeing up here. This is more of the blue from our image. But I think I'll still go in here and just desaturate that a little bit. And do a little keep, do a render. It's always good to keep your images. That way you can always refer back and say, where was I, where am I going? Okay, now I'm getting kind of gloomier in the scene. So here it was before, a bit brighter. Now it's a bit gloomier. So I think I liked it a little bit brighter, so I'm just going to go back and undo those settings. Alright, so that should be good. Good enough anyway. We don't need to get this thing totally nailed down. Alright, now looking at this, we don't really have any shadows in our scene. We don't have any bounce light or anything fancy in here, which we should have. This is the day scene. So I'm going to create a light. And in this case, we're going to use a directional light. Okay. Oops, frame it. I'm going to scale it up. And a directional light is just a set of arrows. It doesn't matter where the arrows are. The only thing that matters is where they're pointing. So I'm basically picking what my sunlight is shining on right now. So if my sun is way back over there, the sun's rays would be shining straight down like this. Okay. So if this is more of a dusk scene, we might be like this. If it's more of a midday scene, we might be like that. But we're just going to try to find a good angle to kind of hit this at to show some of our stuff. So now we'll save again. We'll render. And now you can see we're getting some shadows. Obviously these shadows are enormously dark, and we're going to have to tweak them. And our render time is a little bit lower, or quicker, slower, whatever you want to call it. We were at 11 seconds, now we're at 15 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control A so I can go to the light's properties. I'm not going to worry about any drop off on this because the directional light really doesn't have any drop off because of where it goes. I'm just going to go to the shadow area, go down to the ray trace, and under light angle I'm just going to give this a bit of a light angle here, so let's say 30. And what that should do is just kind of spread out our shadow some. Okay, so you see how our shadows are now more diffused than they were before. I didn't save it, of course. The previous one, you can remember the shadows were super duper dark. Okay, so maybe I want to find just a good medium ground, maybe 15, to have this go in there. Okay, so now we're getting some diffusion here. Now I want to lighten up some of these dark areas. Okay, we shouldn't really have anything. Our light should be kind of hitting in this area and then bouncing up and illuminating some of this other stuff. So I'm going to go to our render settings again. I'm going to turn on Final Gather, and I'm just going to lower these settings, 0.50, 0.5, and 50. This will give us nice low quality settings. Again, I didn't save it. Okay, so now you can see one of the big changes. We are getting the light under here, but now this is kind of a purpley tone. And the reason this is a purpley tone is because of using Final Gather, the sky is actually like influencing what the ground is looking like. Okay, so we can adjust that too. I'm going to go to, I can just marquee back in this background and it'll select it. Go back to this, and under Render Stats, I can say visible in Final Gather, visible in refractions, visible in secondary reflections, visible as environment. Okay, so I turn off visible in Final Gather, and I believe I saved it, yes. I render this again. You can see that that final gathering effect is totally gone now. Now that may not be something we totally want to do. We may not want to fully get rid of the final gather effect. I'm just going to hit escape. So we can see obviously here it was, there it is. Okay, we may want to adjust it. So I'm going to go to visible and final gather, and I can adjust the environment color effect. Okay, so if I go into my color gain, and let's say I tinted this to green, I'll just render a little swatch just by marqueing and then clicking the little red box up here. Marquee first, click the red box. Oops. The marquee big enough. Okay, so now you see the sky is a bit green. And this is just tinting the background of the sky. If I go here, adjust final gather color effect, and I click on green, now you see that we're kind of color correcting what the effect is. So we can play with two areas. Because we're doing it with this texture here, we don't need to worry about using this one. But if you were using an HDR and you didn't have another program, you could just adjust it here, or if you just wanted to tweak it. So I'm just going to go into here, and I'm just going to, let me go back to this color. I'm going to eyedrop this color here. All right, so this color gives me 222.295. Let's just say it's 222 just for sanity's sake. Okay, if I punch this with the opposite color, I should be able to kind of get rid of that color, okay, or neutralize it. So the opposite of 222 is minus 180. So it's basically going to be 42 should be the opposite. So if I hit that with a yellow, you can see I'm nearly back to just a plain gray. I'm not totally there, and I don't totally want to be there. I want to kind of tone it down, but still have some of this. So you see how I'm basically getting some of the color effect, but it's not like crazy purple. It's just kind of like this blue-ish tone. Okay, so I'm much happier with that. So let me just do a full-blown rendering. Alright, so now here is our scene with that rendering in there. Here it was before, there it is now. So you see how we kind of toned it down a little bit? And we can still adjust it if we need to, okay? We can still go through and play with that color later. But we just want to tone it down because right now it's just like way too blue. I think that's going to help tie it in a little bit better, just kind of having the coloring be kind of more neutralized instead of just this overpowering blue. Alright. So we have that. That's good. We can always add another light too if we decided that we still wanted a little bit more light inside here. Or what we can do is let's go to the outliner and grab our directional light. I can go to the shadow color and just tone these shadows down. And what that's going to do is just knock down the opacity of those shadows some. Okay, there they were before, there they are now. So you can see the difference there, how I'm adjusting the shadows. I want to make sure I have shadows, but I don't need them to be super duper dark. I could also tint the color of my shadows a little bit. Let's say I did want them to be this purpley color. And see how I'm tinting those shadows instead of them being just a solid color. I typically like to leave that kind of stuff for later on, because once my textures get on there, these colors are going to change a little bit. So I don't want to play with them too much that I kind of get it, I get it a certain way and then I go back and have to adjust it again later. So I'll just adjust it later. Alright, so one other step we're going to add in here is we want to take the image color profile under the render view, display, color management. We just want to make sure the image color profile is set to linear and then sRGB. And then our colors will be correct. Okay, this is added in from later in the video. I kind of spliced it because I missed a tiny little step that's actually pretty important. I'm going to add in a couple objects here. I'm going to add in a polygon sphere. And I'll bring it right to where the front of my camera is going to be. There we go. And I'm going to duplicate it and make one here. Duplicate it. Just going to try to fit all three of these spheres in the view. Okay, so I just have 3 spheres right now. And my goal with this is that I have this center sphere is my texture testing sphere. Let me scoot this to the other side of the pole. There we go. This is my texture testing sphere. This is my flat gray sphere. And then this guy over here is going to be my chrome sphere. So I'm just going to go to lighting and shading, assign new material. And essentially what I want to eventually be able to do is go to assign favorite material and have this Mia automatically loaded. Most likely yours isn't going to be. So I'm going to find Mia inside here and middle drag it up to favorites. Okay, it's already in mine, so I'll probably have 2 copies now. I don't. Okay, I also have light surface in here, which we'll get to. And under Maya, I also have a gamma correct. So I'm going to go to surfaces in Maya. No. All right, I'll have to get to that later. All right, so I'm going to add a Mia or a MIA material X passes to this. Change the preset to Chrome, and I'm going to call this Chrome Sphere M. Okay, so there's my Chrome. This is going to be my gray. It doesn't really matter what order you do these things in. So another Mia. And I'm just going to do this one as a matte finish replace. Okay, and then this one is going to be whatever material it is I'm adjusting. All right, so if I'm doing this pole, instead of doing it on the pole, I want to do it on the sphere, and that way I can see how it looks on the pole and then just apply it there. So if I come back in, save this, I'll re-render it. All right, so here it is. So I have my reflective sphere right here. I have my matte sphere, and then I have my texture testing sphere right in the middle. Okay, so this is ready to go to start actually texturing the stuff. So let me go through and save the scene as, and we'll just call this begin texturing. Yeah, I'm going to call it new begin texturing because I have another one that's already called begin texturing. And we'll call it 0, 1. There you go. Okay, so let's do some of the easier ones first. Now I want to look at kind of what these things are made of, and I want to figure out how I would create these kinds of textures, what properties the textures have. If I need to use Google as a reference, I will use Google as a reference, or any source images that I have. So if I look for, I'm going to do the trash can first. All right. If I look for some of the materials that I think would be made out of this, I think that these would most likely be like a plastic material. Okay. This would most likely be a plastic material. I can't see it really being like a wood. Same thing here. This could be a metal band, but I think I'm going to keep this entire thing plastic, just kind of like recycled plastic kind of thing. All right, so I can look for plastic trash can. Street. And sometimes you can pull up things very easily through Google. Sometimes it's just a matter of typing in just plastic material. And you can find loads of different plasticky type materials available that you might want to test. Or just look for a plastic plank. There we go. So something like this is maybe what the material is made out of. So I can look at this and I can see how much shine there is. You can see there's a little bit of shine right here. It's pretty diffuse. It's not pretty sharp. If I go to something like this, you can see that even better. You can see where the shine is happening on here. And it's just kind of going back. It's not like metal. Okay, if you look at like this, you can see where the speculars are. You can see where these things are happening. So if it helps to look at these things, which most likely it will, look at those things so you get a nice reference for what you're doing. Okay. So I'm going to grab all of the garbage can pieces. So this, actually I'm not going to, let me do it to the ball first. Sometimes I'll assign it to all the materials and then go through and put it on the ball. I think I'm just going to, I'll do that just because that's my habit. That way I can always test it right afterwards. So I'm just grabbing all those pieces and then just deselecting the things that I don't want. Okay, so back to assign Mia. Now I want this to be a plastic material, so I can always go to the presets and type in glossy plastic or matte plastic. Okay, that way I have kind of a starting point. So let's go to matte plastic and replace it. And in here, I'm going to go to the color, and I have to add my gamma correct. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to go to gamma correct. So I type in gamma. I go to utilities, and here it is. So I'm just going to middle drag this into favorites. That way, all I have to do is click on Maya, and there it is. I don't even have to type anything in. 0.454. This is going to be every single object that you color is going to be 0.454. And then under value, we're going to pick the actual color we want for this. So I'm going to pick in some sort of brownie color like that. Okay, so I just have this brownish color. All right, hit the back button. Make sure I name this thing brown plastic. And I like to put where it's going to go. Trash can, Mia. Some of the things I'm going to adjust, like reflectivity on this, I want to tone this down. I'm going to take the glossy samples down to set glossy samples to 1. And then let's take a look and see where we're at with this. So I'm just going to marquee just this section, because that's really the only section that really should be affected by it. So anything else in here, I mean, obviously these trash cans are going to be affected, but I can just focus my efforts here and make sure I'm getting something good there, which will apply to all the other stuff. Okay, it's obviously a bit dark, so let me go in here. Actually, let me go back here and see the roughness. We're playing with the settings a little bit. Played with the reflection color, pulled it up a little bit. Took my roughness down a little bit. And then I'm just going to adjust the color here. There we go. So this is the kind of color I'm looking for, is this like chocolatey brown color like this. Now it's really going to help make it look like plastic is having some sort of texture to it. Right now it's just smooth brown plastic. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to scroll all the way down to bump. I'm going to go to standard bump, click the map button. And then on here, one texture that I really like for doing plastic is granite. So in here, if I were just to render this as is, you can see that it adds a little bit of texture to it. In this case, it's adding a lot of texture to it. But it does add something to it. Okay, now we have to remember the scale of this. This is pretty tiny. These pits in here are going to be huge. These are going to be like, I don't know, 5-inch pits. Okay, so I'm going to go first take the bump depth down maybe to 0.25. Go back to the granite. And the granite comes in this color pattern of brown, green, blue, and black. So I'm just going to take all of these off. Because we're dealing with a bump map, I like to just take everything back to black and then just pull some of these other values up. Okay, so my filler color, I typically keep it black, and then I just adjust these. And I'm basically telling it where it's going to be pitted. Okay, now this was too big, like I said, so I'm going to take the cell size down to 0.05 and hit this render preview button, or whatever, the render region button. And now as we zoom in, we can see that this thing is pretty tiny. The dots are a lot tinier. We have a lot more stuff happening here. It's broken up. It looks much nicer. Okay, and we can always go back to the bump if we decide, well, we've gone too far on the bump. Save it, render it again. Okay, so here is bump it at 1, bump at 0.5. So you can see the difference here where we can adjust those kinds of settings. I think I'll probably actually go with maybe in the middle, 0.5, and even make it a negative 0.5. That way, instead of these things bumping out, they bump in. Just so you can see what the bumping in is going to look like. And sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes you just want to hit it at 0.5 just to see if it's going to make a difference. Okay, it's a little bit difficult to see, but now these pits look like they're more going inward than outward. Okay, now if I go to the granite again, and this image is really hard to see because it's so tiny. Let me go to the Hypershade. Window, rendering editors, Hypershade, or put a shelf item here. Go to textures, and I can zoom in here so I can see this a bit bigger. Okay, so here is that granite texture. If I take the density down, you see how I can play with where, how many points we have. I can also play with the mix ratio to change some of this. I can play with the spottiness to play with some of that. And I can play with the randomness. Okay, and also I can play with threshold. Alright, so I can play with those settings until I get something that I'm happy with as far as what that pit pattern or what that dotty pattern is going to look like or supposed to look like. At this level, I think it's actually probably a little bit too low. I want to add maybe a little bit more density to this. And you can see how quickly this is going, just kind of isolating it to this one object. Here, it'd be actually a bit hard to see on those. Alright, I think that's probably good there. Just going to pull the reflectivity color up a little bit and the reflectivity down a little bit. Okay, this is basically the specularity color. There you go. I think I'm liking that. Okay, so now that I'm liking that, let me go and render one of these trash cans. Actually, I'll just render these two guys back here. Okay, and I like it on there. It seems to work good. We're not really going to see a whole lot of pitting just because it's further away, but that's fine. Okay, so there is texture number 1. Now let's go through and get the other stuff. So what else can we do? I have this and this on each one of these guys. Now I could have just textured one trash can and then duplicated it, but no big deal. So I assign a new Mia to all of these objects. This is going to be trash, dark brown plastic Mia, trash can ring Mia. Okay, so same kind of thing. We can start off with one of these. I think I'd rather go with a glossy plastic in this case. And then let's take the color, add a gamma correct to it. Hit the back button. Oops, hit the back button. I gotta pick a color first. There we go. And maybe I want to go with a lighter color. The trash can is already pretty dark, so maybe I'll go with a lighter color on there. Let me call this light brown plastic. Okay, take the reflectivity down some, take the glossiness up some. Alright, I'm going to scrub in my timeline just to reset my view. And I'm going to render this area again. Okay, so that's looking nice. This specular glossiness may be too much, so I'm going to tone that down a little bit. There we go. That's pleasant looking. Okay, now I want to put granite on here again, but I like the settings I had on the other one. I think the other one is a good scale. Everything is kind of set up at a good rate. I could go down here and click on this and go to granite and try to remember all these settings that we had on here. 0.5, I think it was actually negative 0.5. And granite, and then I could play with these and then try to get them to be about the same as the other one. But I just find that's just it's a lot of extra time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to the Hypershade, And if I go to textures, here is that original granite. Let me delete the granite 2 that I just created. Here's that original granite that we had. If I go to utilities, here's that original bump that we had. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that material, which is light brown plastic. I'm going to go to utilities, and here's that bump 3D. I'm just going to middle drag this onto standard bump. And that's going to automatically connect the bump for this onto that. Now I have to make sure I middle drag onto the word standard bump and not into the area here. Okay, so now when we render this, everything should be set up. So there it is. So now we have this plastic, and it's got this these like pittings in it. So we're cool. I think that looks good. Let me go through and render these 2 trash cans. There we go. I think I like the contrast in the 2 objects. I think it works well. I can adjust them later if I realize that it's not blending with other items in my scene, but I think that's good. So that one done, no problem. Now I have these inner pieces here, which are just kind of the filler pieces, and you can see them. If I go back to the render view, you can see the gray in between these. So I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on those objects because they're so tiny. I'm basically just going to give them a color. So assign a Mia to it. I didn't even bother grabbing the middle sphere. Black. Inner trash can Mia. Okay, so black matte inner trash can Mia. So I'm just coloring this black and just softening the specular of it. Okay, now that we're going to see too close inside there, but just so we have something going on. There we go. And maybe we want to lighten it. Let's just see what it looks like if we lightened that. Drop a gamma on there so we get the correct color. So back to texturing. So I'm going to grab this and maybe just color a little tan color there. Just to see what it's going to look like if we went with a light color instead of a dark color on the inside. And that looks nice too. Try the darker color again just to see. Maybe I'll grab one of the trash cans and do dark. The other trash can do light. That way I can kind of compare them side by side. Yeah, I think I like the lighter better. I'll stick with the lighter color. Okay, so that's good for those guys. Let's see, what else can we do? These poles here, okay? So this pole, this pole, this pole, and that pole are all going to be made out of the same material. So we'll add a new Mia. And we'll call this bronze metal poles Mia. Okay. So I'm going to start off with copper. And I'm just going to adjust my coloring on it. So with this coloring here being set to orange, when it renders, it wouldn't color correct that. So anything you have as far as where these colors are, you have to do a gamma correct on those. Okay, so if I want that color, I'm going to click on it just so it loads it into my swatches here. See how now it's loaded in swatches and before it wasn't. So I can click on that and add a gamma. There we go. Now I can pick on that color. Now I can go here, add another gamma. There we go. Alright, so now if we go back to frame 1, grab the sphere area, we render this out. we're going to get that orangey color. It's not what we want. That's not the end goal. This isn't like the City of Bling where I want everything to be super goldy. Okay, I actually want this to be like a kind of like a really dark green color. Like that-ish. Okay, so let's see what that's going to look like. It's a little bit too glossy for me. So I'm just going to tone that reflectivity down, tone the specular down, render it again. Okay, you can see where the green and the orange are mixing because I changed this color here, but not that color. So I have to make sure I change both colors. I'm going to brighten this one a touch. I think it might be a little bit too green. Let's go back to, oops. Go back to my diffuse and just pull this color weight up a little bit. I'm going to go more towards yellowy area, but desaturating it. So now we're in the yellow to green area. I'm going to take that weight down a little bit more. There we go. I think I like the way this is kind of looking, except I want a little bit sharper specular. I'm just going to pull that specular up a little bit. There we go, like that. I think that'll probably be a nice looking pole. I'm going to take the glossy samples back down to 1. Re-render a little bit quicker. There we go. Okay. So now let's see what this is going to look like on one of these poles. Okay. And the sphere actually looks kind of funny. But on the poles, I think it looks pretty good. I like the design of it. Okay. So that one's good. What else can we do? Alright, well, that's the basic textures. Anything that's just a flat coloring, you can just go through and do that. On these guys here, we actually have 2 different materials. There's this material here, which is like glass material. Oops, come on. And then we have this material, which would be just like a metallic material. Okay. Now the way I broke those pieces off is I grabbed the face for that. I went to mesh and I said extract. And then now these are 2 separate pieces. Okay. And if I want to put them back together, I just grab both and go to mesh combine. And now they're back to being 2 separate pieces, or 1 piece. Okay. Now they still have holes in it like that. You can see I can grab the vertice and open it up. So I always want to do a mesh combine, edit mesh, merge. And then I'll merge all those vertices together. And I just want to make sure that my number over here is set really, really low, like 0.001. And now we should be good as far as all that stuff. Okay. So that's how you can take something apart and then put it back together. Alright, so on these we could add like a glass material. So sign favorite, Mia, glass, lamp, post, Mia. So I can start off with several of the glass ones that are in here. There's physical, solid, thick, thin. I'm just going to do thin glass. Okay. And it comes in with an index of refraction. This is actually probably going to be a bit too much. And I can do it on here, but I'm not going to get the same result as doing it over there, but we'll see. Okay, so this is what it looks like here. It looks like a big bubble. You can see that his hand is actually a little bit distorted right there, which is fine. Now, if I do it up here, I'm going to get a different result. So sometimes I will not use this big sphere in the middle because I want to see what it's going to look like on the actual object in the scene. Okay, and this is one of those cases where here it's hard to see what it's going to look like there. And I think right off the bat, done. I mean, I can't really see adjusting this too much. Yeah, I think it looks good. It looks like glass. Okay, there's a little tint to it, especially when we have our light bulb textured on the inside. Okay, so I'm going with basic materials, basic material on this, some basic material on this. When I textured these guys, I actually did two basic materials. One was on the outside of it, so I went to here and did a Mia, and I'm just going to not color correct this just so you can see it, but I made this like the outside color, and then I went on the inside and grabbed these faces. Come on. Kind of like that area, I think it was. Maybe a little bit more. Yes, one more out. There we go. I grabbed those faces and then I assigned another material and I put that to black. And if you look at a street light, that's what it is. The inside is black and the outside is colored. For these guys, now you do color correct these. I'm just not color correcting that because I want you to see just the quick process. Okay, you have to gamma correct all of your colors. The only things you don't have to gamma correct are files that you're bringing in. Okay, so on this guy here, what I did was I assigned a Mia. Okay, and I went to the map button because it's not, if you look at an image of a street light, and you may have even seen these just in the process of looking at lights, but you see it's not just a flat color, it's actually like LEDs in here. So I'm going to click on the map button, go to File, click on the folder, and inside here I actually found an image. Okay, and this image is actually pretty sweet, where it has all these different LEDs of different kinds of lights. So I'm going to open that image up. I'll hit View just so you can see it a little bit bigger. So you see here's LEDs. It's actually a bit low res, but it's further away, so we don't need to worry about it. Here's a yellow or a green light. Here's a yellow light. Here's a red light. There's some blue lights in here too. I could always color correct those if I needed. Okay, so I'm gonna put that on there, and I hit 6 so I can see it, and you see how it comes in. It doesn't really come in the correct way. Okay, because this is a sphere, or was a sphere, the texture for it is not going to be laid out correctly, just like our Gillette can and the other stuff that we had to do. So I'm going to go under UV texture just so you can see this, but here are the UVs for it. Okay, they're not right. They should be basically a circle that we can kind of place where we need to. So I'm going to go to Create UVs. I'm going to go to Planar Mapping option box. And I'm going to look at the direction this thing is facing. It's facing in the Z direction. So I'm going to click on Z and hit Project. And you can see in here, it projected the sphere. So now inside this view, there's that circle. So all I'm going to do is come in here and grab the UVs and just move it down into that green zone and just scale it up to fit. That's all I'm doing. Just fitting this shape to that shape. Don't make it any more complex than it already is. It's a very simple thing. Just resize it to fit into this area. And now if I look inside here, you can see that it fits the green perfectly. I can go to the hypershade. I didn't name that, did I? There it is. No, I didn't. So let's call this traffic. Oops. Signal light Mia. And take the reflectivity down a bit. Glossiness I'll take down slightly. But one thing I want to do is add bump to that. Okay, so I'm going to go click on this and click on this double arrow. And in here I have this file. And all I want to do is Kind of the same thing we did with granite. I'm going to click on the signal light, go to standard bump, but then just middle drag this file onto the standard bump word. Okay, and now this would be a little bit bumpy. So I'm just going to stay here while I render this, just so you can see what it's going to look like. So now you can see this looks like it's a traffic light. It's basically just a sphere. We've slapped the projection on it, and there it is. I don't need to do anything really further to adjust this texture. I think it looks great the way it is, just like that. If I was going to animate the coloring of it, I may want to drop in a light surface on the color, or on the advanced section like we did on the light bulbs of Gillette. But I think where we're going to be at in the scene, I think it's probably going to be good where it was at. Okay, so there's the green. Now I have to do the red. Well, I'm lazy, so I'm actually going to just delete these two guys. I'm going to duplicate these two. And by looking at some of these pictures, you can see how close these guys actually are. Okay, so sometimes you'll kind of put your textures on and realize, wow, my model is like way off, even though you looked at reference, which happened here. So I wanted to just adjust sizing for this stuff. There we go. Okay, so now here's my yellow light. So here's what I need to do to fix the yellow light. I click on that object. I come in here. I click on my file under textures. There it is. I right click and go to UV. I marquee it. I drag this over to the yellow light. I can pick any one, doesn't matter. Hit 6. And now I have a yellow light. Okay, grab the next one up. There's the UVs down here, so we marquee them. Drag it over to the red light. Dropbox application popped up. Alright, so now let's take a look at all three lights. And again, I'm doing this up here just so you guys can see a little bit better. It's harder to see when it's further away. But you can see how this works. Red light, yellow light, and green light all worked, all being drawn off the same texture. I can adjust all my reflectivity together. I can adjust all of my bumps together. Whatever. It all works. Okay. Wait for the red one to load. There it is. Okay. So now we have all three of our lights ready to go. So now let's say in here I want one of these guys to be lit up. So I can go down to additional color, click on this, and add a light surface. Type in light, click mental ray, there's the light surface. I can just drag it into favorites. So I have it. Now for the color, if I went in here and I clicked on this and I added my file, or I middle drug my file from here onto color, let's save this image and we'll re-render this area. What's going to happen is all three are going to be lit up. Okay, so it's basically like illuminating all three of these lights. We wouldn't want all three of them to be illuminated at the same time. We'd want one to be illuminated, if anything. So this might be the case where we would have some sort of other texture that we brought in. Like if we took this into Photoshop and we created a brand new texture that had nothing on it except for the area that we wanted to light up. So basically like totally black, and then if we wanted the green to be lit up, that this would be green. Or if we wanted the other area to be lit up, it would be the yellow one or the red or whatever it is. Okay, so in this case we're not going to worry about that too much. Just going to break the connection, delete the light surface. Good. So I'm just kind of doing bullet points of how to texture some of these objects. Here's a banner back here. I'm going to go and make a Mia. Set up the properties for the color and whatever else. I'm just going to find a file. And I found this DIA one. Now you see that these are all JPEGs. Eventually you want to go through and save them all out as IFs. But right now I'm just kind of leaving them as JPEGs as I do placeholders. And then once I'm kind of set, then I can go through and resave them as IFs. Okay, so I found this image, Motor City Pride, thought it was kind of neat. Me delete the history. Okay, I would adjust my reflectivity and my glossiness. My samples down. Under standard bump, what I want to do is, because it's made out of cloth, I'd want to use a cloth for the bump. Keep this kind of low. Go to the cloth here. Go to the forward arrow. And then if I just render it like this, just so we can see it. We're not really going to see that cloth texture kind of pop out too much. Okay, and the reason for it is basically taking that cloth texture and repeating it 4 times. So we're basically getting just like 4 of those big things. You can kind of see it right here. You have 4 of these big things of cloth kind of repeating. It doesn't look very natural. Let me take this and actually make it 0.5 just so it's a little easier to see. There we go. So now you can definitely see something's popping out here. So I'm going to go back to the cloth and I want to take my repeats and I'm going to say 200 and 200. Okay, now because this is more vertical than it is horizontal, I have to play a game of just kind of adjusting this until it looks right. But now as I zoom in closer to this, you can see it definitely looks like there's more going on here, that it is more of a cloth material. And once this is done over the entire thing, you'll really kind of see that. So you can really see how it's diffusing that specular and giving us that look. I'm going to go to the UV texture editor with that cloth selected. And I just want to see where my textures are. So it looks like it's pretty much vertical is where we're at. Okay, so it's basically exactly the way I wanted it to show up. So I'm going to go in here, and the U direction, this is the repeat U, is going horizontally. The repeat V is going up and down. So I want to make sure that I have more going up and down than I do going across. And we can roughly put double. Okay, so if it's 200 going across, it should be 400 going up and down. So I'm going to go to 150 here and 300 there. And we can zoom in kind of on a good contrasty area and see what that's going to look like. We're never going to be this close to it. I just want to see if we're getting something that looks more natural than where we were at. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'll let it continue just so we can verify it looks pretty good. Alright, so this is taking an extremely long amount of time, especially because we're zoomed in. So I'm just going to hit escape. Okay, but we can see the detail in here and see that we're looking good. And if I go back to frame 1, do a little render snapshot. That's what the little camera does, the little wireframe. And we can just marquee that area, render that out. Stuff like that would be hard to see on the sphere. You really wouldn't get a good idea of what it's looking like. So there it is up there, and we have a nice little texture on it where it looks like it's made of something besides just like a flat plane. Okay, and our street light looks pretty good also. Cool. Alright, so what else? Let's go to the door, because the door is going to be a bit tricky. So here's where I want to put the door. Okay, I want to add in some more detail here just so it looks more like a door. So before I start breaking things off, I'm going to go in with my insert edge loop. I'm going to pop in some divisions here. Actually, just maybe the 1 right now. And I grab this border going around the door, and I'm going to extrude it. Now if I grab this and pull it in, you can see how we're getting this really weird shape. So I'm going to go to thickness and type in 0.05, and you see how it takes it in nicely. Maybe even 0.02. There we go. Okay, I'll extrude again. I'm going to go to my offset, 0.01. No, 0.02 again. And I'm going to delete these bottom faces. I don't really care for those. I'm just going to verify that I'm locked in on the bottom here. Oh, somehow I grabbed the whole building. Still good there, good. There we go. That's nice and neat now. Okay. I'm going to do one more extrusion here. Just take another thickness. Alright. Those are the little details that really add something to your scene. Alright, so now let me grab this face here. And you see I basically have 2 faces for where the door is going to be. I'm going to go to Mesh Extract, and it pops it off. Back to Object Mode, click on it. I can center pivot it and pull it forward where I want the door to be. Okay, so let's say somewhere like this. So now we'll go through and add a material to it. This will be door Mia. It's the only spot I'm going to use it, so I don't need to go in fancy naming door. One door, that's all I need. Click on the map button, click on the file, click on the folder, and I have this door here that I want to use. Okay, so I hit 6. You can see where it gets placed, not in the correct spot. So I can go to, if I go to the UE texture editor, I'm probably not going to even see where the door is at. No, I do see it. It's way down here. So you can see it's picking up some of this cement area. So I can very easily just grab the UVs and scale it up until it fits. Now I don't want to do it to this door because you see that this door is actually tucked behind that door. So I'm going to do it to this door here. Okay, and I'm just sizing it to fit it. Alright, so there's our door. Now we have some issues with our door. 1, this handle is on here. We don't want that handle. 2, there's a reflection of a girl in here, too. We don't want that either. So we're going to go into Photoshop with this image and adjust it so that it works better for our scene. Alright, so we're back in Photoshop. Let's go into our images and store door. Shops, that's what it's called. Alright, so here's the door. So first thing I want to do is crop it. There's no sense in having all this other stuff around here. So I'm going with my marquee tool. And I'm going to save us a little bit extra stuff around the edges just in case. So I've done that. Image, crop. Okay, good. Now we also want to take this door handle off. There's no reason to have a door handle on here. Because this is pretty close, we actually want to model a door handle. Okay, and this looks like a weird door handle for this building to have anyway. Not that that picture isn't too weird, but it is. Alright, so what I'm going to do is just get rid of the door handle. Here's how I can do that very easily. I could marquee a section up here. I can copy it, Control C. I can Control V, paste it, and pull it down over the door handle. And then I can hit Control or Eraser tool make sure it's soft, and then oops, a little bit harder. I'm just hitting the edges of this thing just to blend it in a little bit. There we go. So I've just basically, as a piece over the top of it, let me make it really obvious. I'll just put levels on it so you can see it. Okay, so there's a piece on top of it that I'm just kind of like covering it up. That's all it's doing. So I'm going to hit Control E, merges it down. There we go, the door handle is gone. I also want to get rid of this area here, so I don't want to see this girl in there. Now if I look at it, it's basically just like this kind of noisy pattern inside there. Oops, with these little squares. So what I did was I created this. I'm not going to go through the entire process because I'd rather you just kind of see the end result and get there on your own into Photoshop. So here is my end door. So I created this using, let me hide these other layers, a flat color or blue. And then I added this texture to it, so it's just basically a layer with a pattern overlay. Then I added those. That's nothing. Then I added just a little bit of color correction. It just seemed like it was too white, so I color corrected it. And then I added this little vignette around the border. Okay. So some of these things are very easy to create. Just to show you the process of creating these squares, I create the marquee tool. Let me hide some of this stuff so you can see. Come on. I use the marquee tool like this. And then I said, okay, that's the size of one of these pieces here. So I went to select, save selection. Hit OK. Then I went to select, transform selection, and I just shrunk it down a little bit. So now it's inside itself. And I went to select, save selection. So now if I go to channels, I have these alpha channels here. So I can control click one, hold down Control Alt click, and oops, wrong order. Control click 3, Control Alt click 4, and now I have just a kind of like a ring inside there. So now if I go through and fill that with white, I did something bad. Let's try it again. Control click 3, Control Option Alt click 4. There we go. Control backspace, and it fills that in. So now that I have that, I can Control Alt drag this. Of course, I didn't put it on a different layer. Let me make a new layer. There we go. I can Control Alt drag this, and I get a second copy. So I can just scoot this down as far as I need to. There we go. Then I can duplicate it again. However the design was. It's easier to do once you have the template underneath you like this. You can just kind of size one of these things. There we go. And then it's just a matter of dragging the duplicates to all these other areas. Okay, so I'm just holding Control Alt and just dragging the duplicates into these areas. Okay, so that was how I created those guys. Turn my color on. Okay, this layer here is simply this grid pattern. That's all it is. There's nothing fancy to it. It's just literally, I went to effects, I filled the layer first, went to effects, picked this image, and then made it a darken, And then I can adjust the opacity of how detailed I wanted that to be. Here are all of my little things right there. I didn't even use this one because I created another one, just kind of like a flattened image of it. And then this guy is just this cloud texture. So I picked some colors, went to filter, render clouds, and created this cloud texture. And then I used this other stuff as a clipping mask to kind of just isolate it into these white areas. And then the vignette is literally me going in with a dark brush and just kind of like hitting these areas in that center area. Okay, so I created a color map, and that's what the color map looks like. It's basically just like the color information of what I want this to do. I also created a specular map. So that's what this reflection map is. And it's essentially it's just the areas I want to be reflective. So I have the door should have some specularity to it, so you can see the specular areas like that. I have this screen area where it has this kind of like misty reflection, where it's not just like a solid reflection. Okay, and the rest of it is just kind of like laying everything together. There we go. And this guy here on top, this is my bump map. Okay, this is where things are going to be bumpy. And all I did was take the original image, kind of like this. I blacked out this area, like that. I desaturated it. And then I used curves to just kind of help bring in some of this contrast. There we go. So just playing with that until I get a good amount of contrast in here, or where I want my specularity to be. So I just saved out each one of these images. And so what I could do is just drop in, here's my store door color. Okay, and it's going to come in a weird spot. I just have to go back to my UVs and readjust it, because now it's basically resized to fit the cropped portion. There we go. So there's my door. It looks great without having that reflection in there or having the handle in there. I go down to my standard bump, click on a different file, and I load in the bump. I go to my reflection color, store door reflection. Okay, and I can tone down my reflectivity, tone down the glossiness a little bit. Now let's hide this sphere, so you can see what that door is going to look like. Okay, let's get a little closer to it. The differences may be subtle compared to what we had before, but you'll find that a lot of subtlety in your work is really going to help pay off as far as getting your stuff to look a lot better. Now the door is probably still going to look a little bit flat. Alright, now the door is done rendering. So you can see that it looks like we do have some bump on it. We have some specularity in here. You can see this whiter area. Now it's looking pretty good overall, but it still looks pretty flat, like especially right here, it looks super flat. So what we can do is I'm going to go in and delete this edge. I'm just going to grab that and delete edge in the edit mesh menu. I'm going to insert a couple other edges. So insert edge loop tool. Let me click on this and just isolate it. So I'm going to click on the door, click this isolate button. Okay, I might have missed the door. There we go. So now let me go to edit mesh, insert edge loop. And I'm going to insert edge loops at these areas where the door would change would actually change the shape. Okay, areas like that. And one more down here, like that. Alright, so I'm going to take these areas like this. I'm just going to extrude it and push it in a little bit. Okay, so now that door looks like it should be like that. I'm going to grab this and extrude it and push that in as well. Now there is going to be some texture streaking in these areas, but as long as we don't get too close, which we're not, we should be fine. Okay, so now we have a little bit of actual dimension to our door. Now we could go in here and add, if this was like a really high detailed thing that we were going to get pretty close to, I'd probably want to go through and just kind of isolate some of these areas. And then grab these guys, extrude them, keep faces together off, offset, oops, 0.001, extrude again, pull it out a little bit. Okay, and then let me turn the wireframe off. And then what we would do is we would get a little bit more thickness here, and that would just kind of help kind of sell the idea of this door a little bit better than just having that flat. We don't need to do that because I'm not getting that close to the door, number one, and number two, I don't think it's really super necessary. So click the green box again, go back to frame 1, re-render that area out. And just like before, this is going to take longer the more stuff we keep adding to this. Alright, so that looks pretty good like the way it is. Obviously we lost a little detail because of our settings, but that's fine. Okay, we can always go to options, test resolution, knock this down, just so we're rendering a little bit quicker. Right now we're at 5 seconds for just a little chunk, still a little slow. Okay, so there's that, there's that. This object here is just going to be flat coloring. Okay, if you want to try out different kinds of bumps, let me bring back my sphere. If I drop a Mia on here, and I want to play with even a different color, okay, anything from the 2D texture area may require that you lay out the UVs. So for something like ramp, on the sphere, it looks great. But now what's going to happen if I were to take the sphere and put it on my building, let's say, or that material? I didn't name it, so it's probably the last one. History. Textures. Ramp. Just got texture ramp. You can see on here it doesn't look very good. I don't see the blue. I kind of see the red. I don't see the green. Okay. So on the 2D ones, you definitely have to lay out the UVs on most objects. Some objects you won't have to. Okay, some objects you can get away with it because they're already laid out by default. Good. Under the 3D textures, we can use any one of the 3D textures with the exception of something like a fluid texture 3D we can't really use here. Okay, some of these are specialized. Let's go to something basic like crater. So here's crater. It's still attached to the building, which is fine. And this, you get, there it is, you get this guy. You get a 3D texture. I'll grab the latest one. There it is. You get a 3D texture, and this 3D texture is going to control the placement of it. So you can see as I move this around and rotate it and scale it, that it's going to adjust the look of that texture. Okay? A 3D texture will do that, and that's why we get this thing, because it's going to control that. So something like crater, I think is what we chose. It's not going to look wonderful, but it's going to look okay for what we're doing. Okay, it definitely doesn't need any UV placement, but you can see what's happening here is that it's placing it pretty uniformly without having to lay anything on there. Even if I look at the building, you can see the texture that we're getting on top of this. Okay. So the 3D textures, Brownian, cloud, crater, granite, leather, you can just drop on there. Okay. Some of them, like marble or even wood, let's say I wanted wood on here because I said, well, I don't want to lay out the UVs, I'm just going to choose wood. You're going to see that wood's not going to look too fantastic. Okay, you can already see that this isn't really looking like wood. It's actually more of like a wood grain. So if you're trying to show like the grains of the wood, yeah, this might work, okay enough. But definitely for trying to get something to look like wood, it's not really going to look like wood very good without, well, it's not going to look like wood very good, number one, at all, ever. But if we wanted to play with it, and there are some applications, sometimes just scaling up this box will give us more of that wood look to it. So if we go into here like this and just render out a section, you can see how now we're getting a little bit more wood coloring in here than we were before. Okay, marble is another one that is not needing that scaling property in order to look better. So we go to marble right there. It can look kind of funny being small like it is, or at the default size. I'm just going to turn Final Gather off, because I mean I can get a good enough idea of what the texture is looking like without Final Gather on here. I can even go to my quality tab and just knock that down some too. So it doesn't really look like marble on here with this like really funky design on there. Scaling that 3D texture up for the marble will kind of help some of that. It's not going to totally fix it. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just go to a place like CG Textures, and then find a good marble texture. Okay, here's a bunch of marble tile-y type textures. Here's a basic like big marble. Oops. Okay, stuff like this where we actually get like a marble pattern in here. And yeah, we might have to lay out the UVs, but it's going to look better in the end. Okay. Now there's also some textures that will do different things based on coloring information and lighting information and whatever else. Snow, I believe that's the one. Snow is one of those things where if I render this, you see we have snow and we have surface color. Snow is white, surface color is red. Snow is going to be always on top. Okay, so you can see our building here doesn't look anything like snow at all. Okay, it's just giving us two colors. That's all it's doing. But our building is completely red. This is completely red, except for the top of this, which is white. And what it's doing is it's kind of looking at the surfaces that are facing up and giving them a white color. The surfaces that are not facing up, everything else, is getting this red color. So if we chose something like our fire hydrant, and I went through and assigned that material to it, you can see the kind of look we can get by using something like this. So we can do one color on the top, one color everywhere else. So you can use this as a way to kind of texture things a little bit differently than you typically would otherwise. Okay, so I'm going to use that just so you can see it on the guy here. I'm going to add in my gamma correct. Click on the map, click on snow. And go a little desaturated red on there. And maybe a little darker red on the bottom. Let's just see what that looks like. It looks horrible. Just pull those colors up more. Alright, that's looking better. I think we're still in the super reflective area here, so let's take that reflectivity down. Take the glossiness down a little bit. We're getting there. A little bit less glossiness and reflectivity. I think it's also going to need some bump, so let's go to standard bump. And something like this is, I mean, I could look at it on here, but I really get a better sense on that object. I'm going to use something like, I think, I'm debating between solid, fractal, and crater. We'll just try crater first. Okay. And the reason I'm debating is because here I get 3 colors. Because it's bump, again, I kind of take these and just knock the colors to black, whites, and grays. There we go. I can adjust the frequency. I can adjust the balance. I can adjust the melt, which is going to kind of blend all these together. Or the shaker, which is going to give me a little bit more contrast in here. Okay, so this, at this setting, should give me some funky results. I need to take the bump depth down, most likely. You can see it looks like our thing is pretty weathered. So let's take the crater bump depth down to 0.25. I'm also going to go into the crater, click on this arrow, and then take this scale to 0.5. And that'll shrink that texture so we have a finer bump on there. Okay, still needs to come down a little bit in the bump depth, 0.05. There you go. So now we have just, you know, some sort of coloring on there. It's this reddy color. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, and on all my textures, I'm never really set in stone on them. I'm always going to go through and adjust it. Now let's look at that red texture on these other objects. Sometimes you'll just start playing with something like this pole, then you realize, well, I'm not really sure I like the way the pole's looking on this thing, you know, next to that thing. So you may adjust the pole's color, you may adjust that color, you may adjust the ground's color, or whatever. So now you can see what this is looking like. It actually looks like we have kind of like a stucco type texture on here. Okay, but now it's on this thing. Okay. So remember, I have lots of little details here. I have my chain, which on my other file, this was completely done. I have all these little bolts I want to texture. I have these things I want to texture. I have these things I have to texture. Okay, so I will go through and do as many of the basic textures as I can, just kind of like flat coloring. Anything with a flat color, and by flat color I mean we don't have to lay out the UVs. Okay, so even like this phone here, I could get away with using a flat color. I can get away with using a flat color on here. This object, most likely I'm going to have to lay out the UVs and do some fancy work. On here, I may have to do some basic UV layout. If I went into this and just grabbed coffee cup texture or label, okay, I don't have anything here, I don't think. No. But let's just say that I grabbed something like this guy. Or something a little bit higher res. Okay, obviously you'd want to make something in Photoshop, but I'm just grabbing something so I can show you this. Alright, so let's go back into Maya. Drop a Mia. Coffee cup. Okay, so here's the basic texture on this coffee cup. all I have to do is go to create UVs, do a cylindrical map, and now that texture on there is going to lay perfectly. Okay, so even those guys you can kind of put on here and not have to do too much worrying about, you know, oh, is it going to fit correctly or whatever, because it's just so simple. It's just a matter of dropping it on and doing a basic planar map. When we get to the building, when we get to the building, it's going to be a little bit different. When we get to the ground, it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, a lot of these things we can go through and just drop in some basic coloring on all of these things. Okay, it's when we want to do customizing that we get into a bit more different areas. Okay, these signs, Mia material. I'm not even going to name it because I don't even care about this file. I'm not even going to use it anymore after this one. Street signs. I have street signs somewhere. Here it is, Orchard Road. Now, eventually I'm going to want to come in and make my own street signs. But as far as a placeholder for this thing, oops, let me rotate this one. Yeah, I think I need to flip it. There it is. Okay, these are simple ones, just kind of moving the UVs around until this is lined up. Okay, and you can see why I want to do my own. These ones look horrible. Okay, but I can drop it in there just so I can get a sense of what it's going to look like. Okay, and for most of your textures, they will be kind of like your final texture or your final shader, like this guy here. He's basically finalized. These baskets are finalized. These poles are finalized. Those traffic lights are basically finalized. Okay. But these other specialty ones, like the name of the sign, I want to customize a bit. This door is pretty much final. I don't think I'm going to change anything there. Unless maybe I put a sign on here, but that's going to be easy to do. Okay. So there's lots of things that are just going to be like final items. But we want to make sure we kind of get them placeholdered on there. And basically you want to just do that process as quickly as possible because once you kind of get an idea of the entire scene, then you can get an idea of where you need to go through and adjust your stuff. Now, one thing that may help you is this MIA Material Maya PDF. Okay, so you just type that into Google, MIA Material Maya PDF. And the top link here, top two links actually, is this PDF. Sure, start down. Of all the things that material can do. Okay, all the Mia stuff, all that we're setting up. Here's all the different things that Mia surface can do and can look like, and how you can change some of the settings. So if you just kind of look through this, you can, if you read it, you know, that'd be even great, but most likely you don't need it. You don't have the time to read the entire thing. You can zip through and just kind of say, okay, well, I need to know about reflection. So here's some reflectivity stuff. Here's no reflectivity, here's angle dependent, here's constant. Okay, here is glossiness set to 1, glossiness to 0.5, glossiness to 0.25. So then that'll give you an idea of different things that you can do to make your stuff look more realistic. Here's different types of glass and what they're going to look like. This is the same model. All three of these are the same model. It's just what those textures are looking like. So definitely get that PDF and use it as a guide to help you on your way to creating some of these textures. Okay, it's going to be a tremendous help. Alright, so that's going to be it for the basic textures. The next part we're going to go over is doing some of the higher end texturing where it requires more UV layout than simply just kind of cylindrical or planar maps.